but they still had to go through basic training and everything. So so I remember those guys, hanging out with them a little bit. There were a lot of women. My bunkmate, I cannot remember her name, but I think that was one of the most eye-opening experiences for me. Coming from small town Missouri, we don't have a lot of people of color at all. Like I think there was one African American family in my entire town, and I think they had 2 kids, but neither one of them were in my grade. So joining the military, all of a sudden, not only am I meeting these people and talking to them, I'm taking showers butt naked, in the personal spaces. And my bunkmate, she was an African American woman from a big city who had joined the military to make her life better. And like her experiences and everything, I learned so much. I didn't realize like how sheltered I was in a lot of ways. She had a really tough life where she was a single mother. She was working as a stripper and was basically able to afford to survive based upon the money that she was making from stripping and a couple of guys who were taking care of her. So for her to join the military, it was an act of freedom that she was able to take care of herself and to take care of her kid. And I just thought, that's mind-blowing. Here I am, just graduated high school. I don't have any of those sorts of responsibilities. And so it was, the diversity of being in the military was amazing.
That's good. And so where'd you go after basic training?
So after basic training, I have to tell this story. So this is probably one of the most upsetting things for me while I was in the military. I studied 4 years of French when I was in high school. And they have a test that you have to take for certain jobs in the military. It's called the Defense Language Aptitude Battery. And I was miserably sick when I went from my small town to St. Louis, which is good, like 5-6 hour drive. And I knew I was going to miss a lot of class. And remember, said I was a geek, so I don't want to miss classes. So I was sick, took the test anyway, and did miserably. I shouldn't have done it. Well, the guys that are there, the recruiters, were like, don't worry about it. You have foreign language experience from high school. You're going to be fine. What I didn't know is that the person had written, instead of 4 years of French, they wrote in every document that I had 4 years of Spanish. So I got in, but they automatically determined I would be a Spanish linguist. And I didn't find this out until after I went through all the basic training. So then I went to the Defense Language Institute in California and started a whole nother foreign language there. One I did not want to learn. I can't tell you how, but I did not want to learn Spanish. Mainly because I felt like I could go anywhere and learn Spanish. I'd go to college. I'd go to Mexico. I felt like I wanted to learn something that was more foreign, or maybe I just didn't feel like Spanish was exotic enough. I was hoping for Russian or Chinese, or so going to California, which was awesome, but Spanish not so awesome. I got to use it a lot while I was there, and it is really like a college lifestyle while you're at the language school. So that was nice, and because I had Spanish, I didn't have to study as much as some of the other guys. So I really got to see more of California. I went to San Francisco and San Diego and Las Vegas, and I went to different places because I had the time. But so I guess it's not all bad. I didn't like Spanish, but I did like living in California.
So you were at Fort Irwin, California, correct? Is that where you were?
Actually, in the beginning, when I left basic training, I went to learn my language as part of my furthering my training in my MOS. And once I learned the language, I had to go to Texas to learn how to use the language. So my job, even though I was learning Spanish, I wasn't an interpreter, I was an interceptor. So that means that my job was to basically be a professional eavesdropper and capture audio of the enemy. So and in this area, target theater is probably usually going to be Latin America, Mexico, and we don't. Spain's an ally, so we don't really have any issues there, or any, and mainly, so is Mexico and much of Latin America. But the war on drugs was really the focus for our theater of operations. Okay. So now, did I get to use my Spanish a whole lot in my intercepting job? No. So after after I learned how to listen to a bunch of cuts and stuff while I was at Goodfellow Air Force Base, that's where I was in Texas, I was then assigned to my unit, which was Fort Irwin, California, and that's where the National Training Center is. I actually was assigned to Op 4. I don't think they have the same thing anymore, but Op 4 stands for Oppositional Force. So basically, other units, before they would deploy or on a regular rotation, would come to the National Training Center to fight us, which was the fake oppositional force. So we would be training them by fighting them. And so I was assigned to an MI company, and we were using older equipment, but we were still collecting transmissions and helping our guys fight the good guys. It's kind of strange, right? As time went, though, and we became more involved in the conflict in Iraq after when 9/11 happened, I was actually in training in Texas, and that was a pivotal thing. Everything changed, right? Like all of a sudden I'm like, oh, I joined the military. This is real now. I could be sent. We went on immediate lockdown once the Pentagon was hit. It really became real really fast. So when I went to my station, they had traditionally did oppositional forces as a MI unit. But what they were finding is as we were sending guys over to Iraq, the biggest thing that they were running into was a language barrier. Well, they said, hey, we've got a whole platoon of people who speak Spanish. Even though Spanish is not as exotic as Arabic, it can still give those guys training when they go to the actual war field, so the battleground. So that was our job, was to be civilians on the battlefield. Sometimes we were the media, sometimes we were sometimes terrorists. But I think the majority of my military career was actually being an actress. And I received a lot of awards for it, so I can't complain. It was fun for me.
That's good. And were you ever deployed overseas?
I was. I went to Iraq. I was stationed in Mosul, part of the headquarters. At the time, I was no longer in the MI platoon that had kind of dissolved. We were spread out. And I went to work with our RSS, which is, gosh, I have to remember, basically the guys who take care of the support. So it was regimental support staff. So I started working there, and then we were deployed as part of the main headquarters in Mosul, Iraq.
Okay. And what were kind of your initial emotions when you found out you were going to Iraq?
Mixed. Part of it was, I'm not gonna lie, it's a little scary. You're going somewhere and there's a chance that, you might not come back, and you hear a lot of horror stories about units that were there in the past in the same area. The unit right before us had a attack on their DFAC. Somebody had smuggled in, I don't know, a grenade or something, but it was a suicide bomber. And that it hurt a lot of people. So it was like coming into this area, they had all this, extra security around certain key buildings, and that made it a little bit scarier. But part of me was also excited because at this point I'm married to my husband, and we are actually stationed at two different stations. He's in Fort Carson, Colorado, and I'm at Fort Irwin, which is a pretty good distance away. So we were only able to see each other if we flew or met in the middle, usually in Utah. Not the ideal way to have a marriage. So I was kind of actually excited that we were going to be closer together when we were in Iraq. His unit was also deployed, and they were in the same theater of operations as I was. So we were able to see each other, ironically, more often in a war zone than we were when we were stateside.
Okay.
So
was it kind of still tough being deployed, both of you being deployed at the same time?
Oh, absolutely, because I think in some ways worse. Being in the headquarters, I heard about what was going on in every different area, and every time I'd be like, is Matt there? Matt's my husband's name. So I'd be like, is that where he's at? Like, what's going on there? So yeah, it's still hard. And I mean, there are moments where, it can get quite scary. We had a couple of mortar attacks where they were actually firing into our living area, and Fortunately, I was always in a safe area where I could get to a bunker really fast. But we did lose a soldier, and I mean, it was 1,000,001 shot, but it still happened. The mortar came in and hit the barrier wall. They would set up these walls in front of the bunkers to try to prevent that. So if it landed in front, it wouldn't burst out. But it hit just perfectly on the corner of that wall that it burst inside the bunker. And we lost a soldier there, as well as some guys who were contract workers. So I mean, there were moments that were scary. We had a lot of injuries too. People getting shrapnel in their eye, and they went home. We had the lieutenant I actually worked with got a pretty good bit of shrapnel in his arm, and it was strange because your body rejects it. It's like it shouldn't be there, so it pushes out the foreign objects. So like every now and then, like a piece of shrapnel would just be like hanging out, and he'd pluck it out, and it was like so casual, But I was very fortunate that I never got hurt, and I didn't ever feel like I was in immediate danger, even though I may have been. And that might just be my optimism. So
and what was your job while you were deployed in Iraq?
What wasn't my job? Okay. It started out where I was supporting headquarters, basically a paper pusher, because I had a top secret clearance, so I could handle anything. As far